No, I'm grateful for you to come on here, and hope to get to know you a little bit more. And so Scott, just out of curiosity, how'd you get started? How'd you get started? In the industry and find your way this direction.
Yeah, it's just a kind of an interesting story, and the fact that in the um, eighth grade, I had to do a science project, like many eighth graders in those years had to do. We had to do a science project, and you went to a science fair. My family had apple orchards, and we had built a controlled atmosphere storage, which is storage with low oxygen levels, and that puts an apple to sleep. Interesting note that apples
Really?
actually breathe oxygen just like we do. So if you lower the oxygen, they go to sleep and they last longer. So you get apples year round. Knowing that we had that, knowing something about it, I wanted to put other. At that point, apples were about the only thing anybody was doing. So I put other vegetables the uh, in the CA throughout the season, and then tested pressures and sugars and different things in different products to see if
Wait,
there was a
when you say a
viability.
CA, what's a CA for?
Once again, a controlled atmosphere storage is when
Control
there's
that.
low oxygen levels. Your refrigerated storage, just like what you see all the time,
Hmm.
we run them around 31, 32 degrees, but we also seal the doors and the rooms are sealed. And we use either, back in the days, we used burners, and now we use actually um, nitrogen generators to push the oxygen out with nitrogen. But we lower the oxygen levels down to about 2%. And like I said, that puts the apple to sleep, and then they last longer. And then we also have to control CO2, and we do that either by a means of, um, gosh, can't get the word out. Lime, sorry, lime, or we use scrubbers to get that out. So it's a process, and we had this storage, and like I said, I put other products in there to study it. Science fair, I got an A+,
Right
but
on.
I didn't get to go to the science fair. I was very offended by that. I actually was ahead of the curve. Many products that I tested, like garlic, are now being done in CAs across the country.
Really? That's
So I was
awesome.
very much ahead of my time, very much got excited about it. And then that led into the excitement for refrigeration. When I got
Just out of curiosity, so if you put garlic in there, what happens? Is
it,
that
it lasts longer, just much like an apple.
really?
It'll actually last longer. In Gilroy, California, if you go up there, there's Gilroy garlic. They use CAs to actually take care of their products.
Now, is
So
that similar to the banana rooms that we see at some of these facilities, the storage facilities?
yes, a lot of those are using chemicals. That's more of a chemical based stunting of deterioration or rotting of the product, keeping it fresh. We do that with cherries too. Some of it's done with CAs, but low oxygen isn't always the right answer for every product. So, um,
That's
yeah,
fascinating, man. I had no idea. So they're actually alive still once they're picked off of the tree. They're
yeah.
breathing, and you're able to put them to sleep and then bring them back to life. It sounds like.
And in a sense, it's that decomposition that occurs with anything. Once you take it from the tree, it has no longer has the tree to support itself, and it has to support itself, and it'll support itself for a period of time.
Hmm.
But every moment it's deteriorating, much like we are. I mean, we're deteriorating every day of our lives too, but we do things to keep ourselves healthy, and that's what we do with fruit, apples specifically, to keep them fresh. Is put them to sleep,
Hmm.
and then they sleep. So as I was saying, I did the science fair, got an A+, kind of ahead of the curve. They didn't really want to do it. Had a real interest by this point in refrigeration and controlled atmosphere. I actually had a huge desire to get into uh, real super cold applications. That was the goal. I always liked playing with something, pushing the envelope. And I thought about it throughout high school, played a lot of football, ran around, did crazy things like most guys do in high school. And it was on my mind, and I worked on our systems, and I was interested, but I thought I was going to go to college to play football, and got that opportunity. Went up to Central Washington University and looked at the guys playing my position, which were now twice my height, but they weren't slow anymore. They were very fast, and I decided to jump into J.M. Perry Tech School in Yakima. J.M. Perry is a 2-year course in refrigeration. It's 8 hours a day back then. Now they're doing 4 10s, but we went to class just like a job. 8 hours a day for 2 years. And then at the end of that, you got your certificate to go out. I can tell you, even in 2 years, extensive learning.
Yeah.
All I did is learn how to be dangerous.
Yeah.
I had a lot to learn yet. In fact, my first service job, I'll never forget sitting on that roof, looking at that equipment going, what have I done? Why am I here? And how do I get out of this mess I've gotten myself into? But, that's one of the cool things about this industry, Jim, is, I sat there on that roof and I gathered myself. I said, you have knowledge. Use this knowledge you've been given. You've had training, and just start figuring it out. And when I figured it out and fixed the unit and went back to the office, I found out from the owner of the company that that unit had been a problem for up to 15 years, and I had just fixed a problem that nobody else could.
And this is as a new guy, you did this. That's awesome.
I found the problem, and so that's a incredible experience. An experience that many people don't get in their job life is that chance to do something that others may or may not have been able to do. And there's a very few of us in this world that can really do refrigeration or heating, air conditioning. My son and I were talking about it. My middle son, he's 17. He's considering the trade. And we were talking about that last night. And he's going to go to a tech school, YV tech school during high school. And he was looking at different things that were offered. Refrigeration isn't offered, so we were looking at different things. And like I told him, I said, you go in to be and nothing against any of these, but a carpenter and maybe carpenters you might, an auto mechanic you might, but very few people make the money we make if you're good at this trade. Yeah. I mean, you're really going to make the better money doing this, because how many people really understand this process of thermodynamics and being able to remove heat from an area and put it somewhere else and to reclaim that heat? So many things coming at us in the future with the CO2 and great things coming to our industry. It's really exciting. And so for me, back in those days when I first saw the refrigeration systems and did that science project, what it did for me is made me realize that this is something that's pretty cool. And I think that's something that we have to, that everybody listening to this podcast should be thinking about. If you haven't chose your career yet, think about all the things you're going to face in a career. Do you want to sit in an office all day? And nothing wrong with that. Some people do. In one place doing the same old job. Do you want to do a job where you can go out and every day's different, every moment's different, and no matter what you do, you're going to be challenged, and those challenges sometimes are great and sometimes they're small, but you're never going to have a day that I never had a boring day once in refrigeration. Maybe in the winter when it was really slow and they made me weld coupons all day, but that's a whole different story. But I think that we all have to ask ourselves, what is it that interests us? And for anybody with interest in mechanical or using their hands, this is the trade. Another thing about refrigeration, heating, air conditioning is it's the only trade I know of that you do everything: electrical, mechanical, you do welding, structural. There's every part of every trade you're going to engage in. You go to carpenters and nothing against it. Once again, they build a building. Yeah. If you ask them to put pipe in, no, we don't do that. If you went to the electrician and said, hey, many times I found journeyman electricians that couldn't wire the controls that I had on my system. Yeah. Because I had a knowledge of controls that they didn't have. So this trade is very unique in the sense that it gives you so many different skills. The skill levels are so broad with those of us that are good as a service tech. Now, you can also get in this trade and become an installer and learn how to weld or braze or put systems together, hang equipment from ceilings and such, and run duct work or whatever it may be. And you're a little more limited in what you're going to see, but it's still a really great trade to be within. And that's another thing we have to consider is that, there's different ways to be in this trade. Like I said, there can be an installer, you can be a service tech, which I always aspire to be a service tech. I like to be out taking care of things, seeing something new. But I also went to school at J.M. Perry with a fellow student and friend, Orv, that became a salesman directly out of school. Yeah. He understood what he was selling now. The best engineers I know are the ones that understand the basis of doing it, getting out there and making things run. So really learning this trade, you can go about anywhere you want to go with it. Look at me now. I mean, my journey from being a service tech to 2003, falling 12 feet onto my head, breaking my back, broke my chin. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing? I mean, I don't know if that's a
Yeah.
personal story or.
No, I'll share it. I'll share it. Um, so let's just step back and I'll start over again with it. I went to a job site in Sunnyside, Washington. I was supposed to have a partner with me. We had a Vilter 500 horse mono screw that we're going to do some work on. I had been trained on the mono screws, but I hadn't done some of the activities we were going to be doing. So my partner, who had more experience, was going to be with me. We went to or he couldn't go to the job site that day. He had to be somewhere else. So as I went down to the job site that day and found that out, I called the office and said, hey, why don't we pull out of this?
Yeah.
And they said, no, do these 4 or 5 items. One of them was changing a suction check valve. One of them was changing a suction transducer. And I had the flu. And so I went to do the job, got in and found the machine off. The suction check valve, which was leaking by, wasn't leaking by. And I called the office again and I said, hey, I don't know if we need to do this today. And they said, no, we got a stack of work orders back here for you. One thing about our trade is you won't be out of work.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, I'll get it done. But I wasn't making the best decisions that day. So I finally climbed up on top of this piece of equipment, approximately 10 to 12 foot off the ground, threw my leg over the suction strainer. So suction strainer on these machines is fairly wide, 2 foot wide or so with the insulation. But I'd been cutting on this insulation. And so when I sat down on the insulation, it broke and I went straight over backwards. Nothing to grab, nothing to stop me.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll never forget that moment when I went, oh, Lord, this is not one you run home to mom about. You know how you were a kid and you ran to mom and she made you feel better? Mom wasn't going to make this one feel better. Woke up on the ground paralyzed. My head had been driven hard enough forward to where my chin hit my chest, blew up my sternum, broke my jaw. 5 breaks to the middle of my back, not lower back. Everybody wants to think, oh, it's back pain.
Yeah.
Paralyzation was a concussion paralyzation. It came back. I was able to drag myself out. I was all by myself,
So yeah, tell me more about that. Like, so you fall, you're knocked out for some time, and you come to wait. I mean, you're by yourself up there. What was that experience like for you when you're just like kind of figuring out what's going on?
Now that is pretty personal in the first part because I remember waking up on the floor and everything's very distorted at this point. Things that are 8 inches tall look like skyscrapers and things were very confusing to me. I couldn't move. And I remember thinking, who is that person screaming in the background? And I realized it was myself. It was me screaming for help. And I didn't even, honest to God, had no conscious knowledge that I was yelling, but I knew that voice. Once I finally realized it was me, it was quite earth-shattering. And at that point, I was very driven to get out of there. Having played football, having grew up on a farm, I've been through injury and hurt before. And it's like, no, you're not going to lay here on this floor. Plus the fact, Jim, I'll be really honest with you, I had a family at home. And the first thing I thought of is I'll never get to see my wife and daughter again if I don't get my butt out of here. And so I drugged myself out and called 911 and went to the hospital. And there's a whole lot more story to that, but go ahead.
Or how did you get down off the building?
I was actually in an engine room. Sorry if I misled you on that. I was in engine room. So when I hit the ground, I was on the ground level.
Oh, thank God. I thought you were up on the roof for some reason. I was like, geez, but how are you going to get down? You could be stuck up there for a week, by yourself.
Well, and that's something we need to talk about in this industry too, is when you choose this industry and for God's sake, don't listen to my story and think, oh man, I don't want to do that. It's dangerous. Yeah, a lot of things are dangerous in life. You just need to be safe and you need to make good choices and you need to not let the job become more important than your safety. And I learned that the hard way. And you know what? Everybody listen to this. I'm not just the victim. I'm the one that caused it. And I will always say that no matter what went on that day, because I always thought I was invincible.
Yeah.
And we're not invincible, guys and gals. If you find yourself in this trade out alone doing things, you better stop and watch what you're doing. Be more aware of your day. Yeah. We need you. We don't need you laying on the floor. That job that was supposed to get done that day didn't get done for 3 months because there wasn't enough people to get it done. Hurrying up doesn't always get you where you need to be.
Yeah. But
back to where we started this whole discussion, my dream for this to be in this industry is still not gone from that accident. And that's where I was leading into my whole part of my story. I mean, here I was, a service tech, good at what I did, probably never would have got out of that service truck, because once you're good in the service truck, nobody wants to let you out.
Sure.
You're a valuable commodity to them. And I would have stayed there, but then I had the fall, and I was in an industry that I learned electrical, and I knew electrical. Actually, I held an electrical license throughout my career. I'd gotten enough training to get my electrical license. And there were avenues because of the trade I took, because of that knowledge I was talking about earlier, that broad sweeping knowledge that we learn. I knew of infrared thermography and using it to detect connections on electric equipment that gets hot, which tells you got a failure coming. Well, with a broken back, and there is no light duty industrial refrigeration, I chose to go out and take every dollar I had and spend it on a company that I bought out to do infrared thermography. In fact, I met your father, one of the true gems in this industry.
Well, thank you, by the way. I was sharing our conversation. He was super grateful, and just, anyways, it was great. He was happy to hear.
But I met some really great people through that. But most trades, you could not have transitioned the way I transitioned to something related, but so different from what I had been doing. The service part was the same, working with people. I was very successful with that, but in the same time period, I met ASTI, the Ammonia Safety and Training Institute. And, when I first met them, it was their chairman of the board, Sonny Basadula, who was like I said, he was the chairman of the board of ASTI. When I did work for Americold, which he worked for, he asked me about my background, and I told him about ammonia. Next thing I know, we were at breakfast. If you ever went to breakfast with Sonny Basadula, you were friends. If he said, let's go to breakfast, you were in the right place with Sonny. And we went to breakfast, and next thing I knew, he invited me to come to an ASTI event. First, I said, no, I got a business to run. I don't have the money. He said, well, we'll fly you down here free, and we'll take care of your food and board for the week. And it's Monterey, California in the fall. And I went, yeah, I think I'll go. And so even though my wife kicked and screamed a little bit, I went to California and went to that class. Became an instructor for him and taught hazmat, emergency response. For ammonia, but I've learned so much about emergency response that I'm now the co-chair of the Yakima County LAPC, Local Emergency Planning Committee. So I actually work for Yakima County Emergency Management. I don't get paid, but it's a volunteer position. But to have that position was from the knowledge I gained from these journeys I took throughout my trade. Now, I wouldn't suggest getting these journeys by a 12-foot fall. That's not a lot of fun. But look at what our possibilities are, Jim. How many trades could really take you down this many roads and put you in a room where you're respected to some degree the moment you walk in the room? There aren't many of them that you can do that with. And so I just really, always want everybody that is considering this industry, ask yourself the questions. Am I okay working in an environment that's cold, maybe wet, maybe hot? Am I okay? Do I want to work with tools? You're going to get dirty. Don't be afraid of getting dirty. Get some bib overalls and get yourself dirty, or whatever you see fit. If mechanics and fixing things is a desire, building systems is a desire, and learning a lot more about our universe and our world than you'll ever imagine, join this trade. And we want you. We'd love to have you. And I mean that from my heart. I don't just say this stuff, Jim, as we're doing a podcast and, I got to say the right things. No, in my heart, my son may enter this trade because I believe in this trade. I've known a lot of men that tell their sons, "Don't join this trade. Don't do this." Worked at a lot of sawmills in my career doing my infrared thermography, and there were guys in there said, "I would never let my kid work in this crap." That's not our industry. So those are just some of the things that are key to my heart, and this industry is key. And like I said, how many jobs can you go through what I've been through and still have this deep, burning desire to teach? Now I work for RITA, Refrigeration Engineers and Technicians Association. I'm the education coordinator. I get to develop and work on materials every day. I get to work with members of RITA that all over the nation, actually international now. We had a bunch of international discussions yesterday. People all over the world of like mind that come together to make something better. That's an incredible place to be. And once again, Jim, I would have never done this if I wouldn't have gone to that science fair in 8th grade, and if I wouldn't have realized my love for refrigeration, and if I wouldn't have taken the steps to make this happen in my life. And when I say the steps, you're going to have to learn some stuff. I've met very few. I was blessed with an immediate understanding of electrical. That wasn't for me. That was from a greater power than me. But I had a lot to learn, and I still do. So it's a learning journey. You're going to learn a lot of things. You've got to be prepared to go get the knowledge and learn the knowledge, and then continue to learn. Another thing I'm working on, I was telling you, I was working on a program for AHR ASHRAE next week that I'll be giving.
Yeah.
And it's on refrigerants. And, you know, we've gone through a huge transition of refrigerants. And back in the early days, it was all ammonia and CO2 and carbon dioxide and ether, for God's sake, and propane.
Really?
Yeah, ether was was the first tested refrigerant. Problem is, ether has a real tendency to explode, and it's kind of dangerous. But
Yeah.
propane, they used propane a lot back then. Well, over the years, we found the synthetics, and we built synthetics that didn't have the flammabilities and didn't have near the toxicities, and were deemed to be safer. I can tell you right now, when you talk safety, everything around you is dangerous. But that talk is going to be on this evolution of refrigerants, leading to a discussion about CO2, because CO2 is now kind of leading the front as the refrigerant of real concern.
Do you
CO2,
see a concern in regards to being used, or concern talking about we're pushing away from it?
no, being used. Yeah, absolutely being used. Good point, Jim. Because CO2 doesn't have the toxicities. It is toxic. Everything known to man is toxic. But it doesn't have the toxicities. It doesn't have the flammabilities, and it doesn't have near the ozone and global warming impacts that some of the others do.
Now, if it's released, it's okay other than displacing oxygen. Is that kind of correct, or what are the dangers if there is a release?
To a large degree, yes. I mean, displacement of oxygen can be dangerous to you and I. High levels of CO2 can cause you some harm. It probably won't kill you, but if you ever had carbon dioxide poisoning, it's not a lot of fun, but that's going to be a lot of it. So there are some dangers there, but and even with ammonia, which I've worked with, and I love ammonia. I'm ammonia nerd. I just absolutely love ammonia as a refrigerant. In a lot of ways, it's a fuel now. We're running ships across the ocean on ammonia.
I see that.
But it has its dangers, right? And that's one of the points I'm going to make in this conversation is I don't care what refrigerant you take. There is no perfect one that's perfectly safe to your health, non-flammable, perfect efficiencies. Everything's perfect. It doesn't exist. What we have to do is look at what is our application, what is the best application, and then best refrigerant for that application, and then choose and understand it. And that's why I was saying about the learning, you know, with the CO2, there's a huge learning curve. Those of us who've done refrigeration for years, CO2 doesn't make a lot of sense because of the pressures it operates at. And for today's discussion, I don't need to get into transcritical and cascade systems that we use, but there's a lot of
quick question though, like, so roughly speaking, what are the pressure ranges for ammonia, and what are the pressure ranges typically? Because I've heard different things, and I don't really know. I've heard some crazy pressures with CO2, but if you could kind of just share a broad range.
Yeah, I'm just going to talk high side now, because low side really is determined on what temperatures you're trying to make in the space you're cooling.
Gotcha.
So we'll just speak basically on the high side, the discharge pressures. You're looking at ammonia, normal operating pressure somewhere between 120 and 180 pounds is kind of a normal range. Some may run a little more above, and we ran below for energy savings for many years, although there's issues with that too. So 120 to 180.
Okay.
And then when you start looking at CO2, you're looking more in those ranges of 800 to, I have seen some of the systems out there that say they'll be seeing head pressures possibly in some locations of the country at 1,700 pounds. So it's
and that's what I was kind of. I was hearing numbers like that, and that blew me away that they were so high. I mean, if you're running pressures like that, I have to imagine that it just creates other complications.
It does, but excuse me, that is why we are coming back to CO2 now, and this is going to be part of my presentation. Is initially when they used CO2 back in the day, they didn't have the technology to build things that we have now. Those kind of pressures created problems with compressors, with the piping, with different valves and so forth. So our ability to build and engineer equipment wasn't up with the chemical yet. Now we're reaching that. controls, electronic controls to be able to control and make sure that these things operate are so much better than they were. But they have copper pipe now that, well, now I think it's always been there, but they actually put metal within the copper to make it stronger, K-type copper to be used under these higher pressures. The equipment, the compressors are built hell for stout. They're heavy as hell.
Really?
And that's why I really
Are they
see
still screw compressors when we're working with, or are we using a different type of compressor?
Well, yeah, most of the use of CO2 right now is in the commercial end, like your rack systems for
Okay.
a grocery store, you know, where you're cooling 20 boxes throughout the grocery store. Industrially wise, we're not building the critical systems that we're talking about in these commercials, because we have, even though we have the technology, making of the larger systems like that and making them efficient throughout temperature changes that we see is difficult. So we use what we call a cascade system there, which is ammonia and CO2 working together or something to that manner. In other words, the ammonia system cools the discharge of the CO2 system, thus lowering that head pressure, lowering those pressures down, allowing it to operate in a more safer range. But I will say this, I was one of the first people when I first heard about CO2, I did not understand transcritical, and we don't have time for that today. Go to a class if you're going to work on CO2 and understand transcritical. But we didn't understand that. But also when I was hearing these pressures, I'm going, hell, I don't want to work on something that's high pressure like that. Scares the hell out of me, because I'd worked around high pressure steam, and when high pressure steam leaks, you don't see it. And the old stories are true. Guys used to walk out in front with a stick out in front of them, and they'd cut the stick in two. That meant you had a steam leak. And so those kind of things came into my head. But I'll tell you, I'm looking at these systems down. I'm going, they're built for it. You know.
How are people learning about CO2, and do we see this moving forward quickly? Can you kind of share with me anything, ideas that you have as far as the push that we're seeing with?
Is it moving quickly is the first question. Yeah, way too fast in some ways for us to kind of keep up with. Now, the people that are doing it, that are at the front edge of this, they're very safe and they know what they're doing with it. But as an industry whole, it's moving so fast. We wrote a book at RITA before my time, but a book was written. It's completely outdated now.
Really?
So it's moving very, very fast. We're rewriting that book right now. It's a very quick evolving. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to improve. I also think that from some of the things we're learning, there's a possibility nitrogen and some other things that we have considered non-usable in the past might become very usable. I've always had a big interest in trying to find a way to use nitrogen, because nitrogen is a great refrigerant, but we just have never been able to use it in a closed system. But you take liquid nitrogen and let it ventilate through a freeze tunnel, and it'll freeze berries and stuff hard as a rock in just a matter of seconds. So, you know, we'll see. It's growing and it's going to change and it's not going to go away. But once again, every refrigerant has its place. You come to the Northwest where we do apples. Very few contractors are successful up in my area because they come up here wanting to put in something new. These farmers don't want new. They want an old, big ass ammonia system that gets the job done. Just under 10,000 pounds. But anyway.
So tell me a little bit more. I mean, I think you shared a little bit about what you're doing with RITA, but can you kind of expand on that more? And I guess what you do kind of on a daily basis, or what you're kind of doing as you move into the future.
So RITA has books that education material. Our mandate is to, you know, help everybody in this industry be better at their job, safer at their job, to train the people. And so we developed, and it was sort of a lot of years ago, development of these materials. And what I do now is I make sure those materials are up to date, establish membership groups that review the materials and make sure they're up to date, make sure they're in learning management systems on the computer. Since COVID, we all got to get online too, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great learning tool. I always will tell you, mix online learning with in-person learning, because you don't want to do
the best
solely one or the other. So development of those materials, and this has been fun for me because, as you heard my story, I kind of walked away from industrial refrigeration because of my injuries. and went in electrical, and then went into hazmat and emergency response for ammonia, and then now being back where I'm working every day on programs that talk about how to run these systems. Pretty intriguing to me again. It's a whole lot of fun. And it amazed me. It's kind of like riding a bike. There was a lot of things I thought I'd forgotten that, oh, that makes sense to me,
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing we need to tell people, Jim, is that, it's a powerful feeling to get knowledge. The one thing in the world nobody can ever take away from you, no matter what they do, is your knowledge.
Yeah.
They can put you in a cage, and during war times, it's been proven that, one of them that really proved it to me was John McCain, and they kept him in that cage, and they abused the hell out of him. They never took his knowledge away, did they? They never took away his fire to get to know and to understand. And so go into this trade, learn. You can go anywhere you want in it. You can do anything you want with it. And that's part of my job also, is to, find membership, help people that are looking to be members. How do we train? What certifications do we need? And that's one of the things I also work on. Is I don't directly work on certification, because our certification tests are ANSI accredited, which is worldwide accreditation. These have weight to them.
Can you break that down for me a little bit? I mean, I've
Yeah.
kind of understood it a little bit. I know it has a lot of weight, but that's kind of where my knowledge or my understanding stops. Like, what's the value of ANSI for the individual person, and then separately for a company? If I'm a plant manager and owner of a cold storage facility, can you kind of break down the value from those perspectives?
Absolutely. So let's just start at the baseline. You come to me, and I'm going to give you a refrigeration class,
Okay.
and I teach you basic refrigeration. Then I give you a test at the end, and I give you a certificate that says you attended. Well, that's good, but that's all it is. And proof that you learned something it's sketchy. I've taught a lot of classes and been in class, in facilities teaching. And just because somebody passes my test doesn't mean that they really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So what we do is a series of books: IR1, in Industrial Refrigeration 1, Industrial Refrigeration 2, 3, 4, Safety, Basic Electrical 1 and 2. You take these different things, and then when you've studied to the point you're ready, you go take a test. And when you take an ANSI test, we at RITA don't make that test. We have what we call a psychrometrician who actually administers, builds, and administers the test. He takes our materials, our information, and builds them into a program that when you take that test, you have to know what you're doing. I mean, I was asked of me here some months ago, somebody said, well, do you think somebody could fake through the Cairo or Cairo test? I said, no. I really, truly believe. And that's why ANSI accredited tests are so important, is because nobody can debate with you your knowledge of this trade when you got an accredited test. And most certifications that have value are like that. To get an electrical license, you've got to go through a whole bunch of certification tests that you don't get to just go sit in a room and ask the instructor questions and work with your neighbor. These are very tight tests. And there's been accusations made. I don't know, accusations may not be the right word, but complaints made that, ASCII's developed these tests and they're hard and they're just trying to fail everybody. No, we're not. We just want, when you pass, it to mean something. And you know what I find most of the time, the people that fail, about 80% of them didn't really put the effort in they should have. And now I'm not slamming anybody, but it's a commitment to learn. And learning has to be something you really put effort into. So that's my job every day, is to make sure these systems are running. I also work with certification. All of the materials that I am responsible for go to certification to create the test. I just don't ever get to see the test, or I never get to write the test or be any part of that test.
Yeah.
Because now I can go take the test as a proctor to go through and see if the test still makes sense. And Jim's done that in the past, our executive director. But beyond that, we really can't, because they don't want, that's what the accreditation means, Jim, is I didn't prep you for it. I gave you the knowledge to go pass that test, but I didn't prep you for the test.
Yeah.
And so that's what accreditation is all about.
No, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And that kind of, so as I work with companies throughout the country trying to help them find and fill refrigeration positions. And one of the biggest things that they're looking for when it comes to ammonia positions, whether it's a maintenance manager, refrigeration manager, ammonia operator, field service tech, is they want a RITA Caro Zero. I mean, everyone wants a RITA Zero. And the problem is there's not enough of these folks out there. And I mean, by far. And they don't get that. And I don't want to say it in that way, but they don't understand typically how few people have that. And the folks that do, especially at Rita Zero. Now, Rita Zero, those folks stand on their own. They're able to garner amazing wages. They kind of write their own ticket, and it's a huge deal to get. What are some of the problems? Why don't we have, I guess, how many people do you think are certified now? And why don't we have 80, 90% of people certified today is a big question.
Well, it's a great question, and part of my job, back to that again.
Sure.
We're always trying to find out answers to these things. We have about um, just as a whole about 1,700 plus certifications in the country that are active right now. I'm not saying RETA's only certified 1,700 people over the
No,
history. It's just
but
that's the
current active.
current active people, and
And is that
some of
Caro and Zero, or is that one
that's
side of the
including all certifications. Yeah,
all certification 1700? So all
but
certifications.
you don't see, like, we have a CREST certification on energy, and we have service tech, and then we have a energy certification. People don't get those unless they've gone through the Cairo and Cairo. So I
Yeah.
would estimate that most of those they're at least at the Cairo level of that 1,700 plus people. Um, why don't we have people in this industry? And that's a long story, and a whole lot of opinion can come into it.
For sure.
But I will tell you that the time period when I got out of tech school in '85 through the early '90s, many people, young
Yeah.
people, did not want to be in any trade. Everybody wanted to go get a damn business degree and wear a suit.
Yeah.
I think we did that to our population. Not that all those people wanted to be there, because some of those people ended up being firefighters after business degrees and everything else, or refrigeration techs, or pipe fitters and electricians, because they found out it wasn't what they wanted. But we pushed our people in that way. So that was the first really loss of people that we had. We had the old generations coming up that had filled the roles fairly well. We were always a little bit short of people. But then we saw that time period, the late 80s through the early 90s. And then we came to a point where it got so pervasive that nobody was going into the trades.
Yeah.
And those few that we were finding, because I was training apprentices during the same mid 90s. I'm a journeyman pipe fitter also in the union. I'd be training apprentices, and I couldn't find guys. And when we found them, they really didn't want to work. I'll never forget one guy I trained. He had all of it up here. He had all the abilities in the world. But when I finally got him to the point where I felt safe to start doing this with him, I said, okay, you're on call with me this week. I'm going to give you a call when we get a call, and I'll come get you. He happened to live pretty close to me, so it was going to work out great. He goes, what do you mean, call me? I said, well, if we get a call in the middle of the night. He goes, I'm not working outside 8 to 5. Well, now you better go into construction, because at this point, you're not a service tech. There's things about this trade that make people uncomfortable. And that's one of them if you're in the service end, which when we talk service, you guys, just so everybody understands, that's fixing the stuff or repairing it or making it run when it won't run.
Yeah.
Construction's putting it in, installing it, and maybe startup. Although as a service guy, I did all those things. I did construction. I did everything that was part of the trade. But that is part of your job, is getting up in the middle of the night. It's funny. As a service tech, I had many people come to me all the time and go, man, you guys make great money. You got it made, man. You don't hardly work. Man, I see you driving around sometimes in your truck in the middle of the day going towards your house. And it's like, yeah, did you know that I was out all night long? If you want to be a service guy, go in, or a service gal, go in and get in it. But you can't be afraid to go outside hours. I'll tell you what, those jobs are some of the funnest. One of the things that people don't get is when you work 8 to 5, you got the bosses around all the time. When you work as a service tech, and I went out on a job, it was my name on that truck. It may have been the company's name, but everybody knew who was showing up. And when I was there, I made my own calls. I made my own calls to what I did, how I fixed it, and everything else. Now, I will tell you, I called my friends a lot. Another good part we should talk about in this industry.
Sure.
But I did my job. I ran my own business in a large sense as a service tech. Went and did my thing. So there's benefits to it, but there's drawbacks. Isn't there in every job?
Well,
And
there
that's.
is. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, go ahead.
No, there is. So when I look at candidates, ammonia refrigeration folks, there's kind of two groups. There are folks that are the race horses, and then there's kind of I don't know what they would call the other group, but like a workhorse, and they don't like the other side of the fence. Meaning race horses, you put them inside an in-house position where they go to the same facility every day, it's going to drive them nuts. And those are the folks we want to put towards field service. And there's folks that, hey, I want to show up, I want to do a good job, I want to, work, but I don't want to deal with clients and traffic and all these other things. They love the in-house. And you know what? Not a lot of people know what you do at the facility. You have so much autonomy, even if you're at the facility level. I probably shouldn't say it like that, but it's different than a lot of other jobs. You have a ton of autonomy, even inside of a facility. If you're outside of a facility and you have the right mentality, it's an amazing opportunity for
Yeah, you'll
field
find
service techs,
what you're talking about there. I talk about service construction, but there's also facility guys, right? That
facility guys.
work at your dad was one of those, and those guys that are good at that, man. I'll tell you what. You talk about autonomy. There's nobody in the world that was going to touch what, short of the regional manager Keith, that was going to even question what was done because they don't know. Your plant manager, hell, they don't know what you're doing. They just know it works. In fact, that's one of my big negatives that I felt in the industry is a lot of ownership and high management. Think it's a refrigerator you plug in at Sears and it runs and you buy a new one when it breaks, and that's not the way it works in industrial refrigeration.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've got a lot of autonomy to do as you see fit. You got a lot of responsibility, and because of that, it's just kind of, Jim, isn't it kind of like, I loved your racehorse analogy, by the way, because that's exactly right. I was and still am to some degree. I just don't run very fast anymore, but I wanted to race. I wanted to go. I wanted to get busy. Let's go shit and get, excuse my language. But
for sure, man.
and there's guys out there that don't want to do that. They want to go, and I knew guys in the pipe fitters that just loved running welds on 24-inch pipe all day long. Give me a piece of 24-inch pipe and a ditch to be in, I'm happy as hell. I'm like, wow, you got a different mindset than me. But that's true of everybody in every industry, no matter what you do. So yeah, it's great that way. I kind of lost track of where we're at.
No, this is great because I've got a friend who, he's a family friend, and I'm talking to him about the industry, and he works at night for a pizza place, and I'm telling him, hey man, you got to get into refrigeration. We can get you a night job, and he doesn't like being around a lot of people. And this is a great industry where you can focus on machinery and not people. And after you know what you're doing, you get your certifications, especially once you get your RITA Zero, and you can write your own ticket the rest of your life. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity, and there's not enough of these guys. You can move anywhere in the state, so your ability to move and relocate, to make great money, to garner respect in what you do is huge. My question is, why aren't we? And let's talk about the folks that are already in the industry. How do we get more people certified? And what do you think are the challenges? Why aren't we getting more people certified that are currently working in the industry? What do we need
Well,
to do?
lack of people is where you got to start on that discussion. It's very hard for these companies now, whether that be a contractor or an industry player like a Walmart or place that hires lots of refrigeration techs. They don't have time to go to school. I mean, they're busy because we don't have enough people. I think that's part of it. The uptick in training is coming, but there was really no have to. And I'll try to stay right down the middle of the fairway on this one, Jim. I have my definite opinions on this, but I can take a guy that's been driving forklift for me for the last 10 years and put him in an engine room. There's no real legal reasons I had to give him training in the past. That's changing, and it's going to change. But I don't think we'll ever get to the point of full licensing, and that's where RITA steps in and the certification step in. It's something you get to choose to go do, but it gives you power, and as you said, you're going to make more money because of it.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have more value. Just like I said with a service truck. Once I got in a service truck, I was never going to get promoted out of that service truck. I might be a foreman, but I am not going to ever get out of that service truck because there's not enough of us to do it. So that's kind of why I think the training is hard, is time and commitment. I mean, let's be honest. If you busted your hump all day long and did that for 5 days and God, you had to come in on Saturday and check some stuff, do you really want to go sit down and study? And that's where I say to people, start your studies as soon as you can. Don't wait till you know more or you're secure in the job, start your studies now. Knowledge cannot be taken away. Start it when you can put some time into it, and then work towards those certifications. Don't get in a hurry about it. Time goes by awfully fast. Just take your time to take step by step. That's where online learning, and one of my big jobs right now is to try to get our online learning stuff in a better place. It's good right now, but it can be much better.
Yeah.
But you could take those classes. You could take an IR1 class. You can buy the book, sit down and read the book if you want. You can take the class online and read the book. But the neat thing about online is you get to take a test. Now, you can take a test in the book too, but it's hard for a lot of people to take a test and evaluate themselves. So in the online version, you take the test, the quiz at the end of the chapter, and it gives you direct feedback. You missed 32 questions out of 40. Well, better go study that chapter again. God, it got 98. If a person takes the time to go look at the 2 they missed, go back to those parts of the chapter, restudy that, retake the test again, boom. Now you have learned that piece of material and you move on to the next. So online is really good for those that have a lack of time because you can do this in steps. There is something that we're doing that in the past you bought an online course and it was forever, right? Until you passed it, until you
Okay.
finished it.
Yeah.
We're going to make it a year now because the problem is our materials change. And so people are going back to their tests 2 years down the road and it doesn't make sense anymore. But I tell you, RITA, somebody called me up and said, I've done this training and it's been a year and a half. I missed 6 months because I was busy, and I'll help you. I'll find a way to get you through it. I mean, we're here to support you. And I want to go back to that because I talked about calling friends when I was in the industry. And I just mentioned, we'll help. I may not have the answer, but I'll find somebody that does. And all of us that work in the industry feel that way. And that's what the point I want to make. Another part of being in this industry, and I don't want to lose our track, but
No, you're good.
is I've met some of the best friends I've ever met in my life through this industry. When you go to war with somebody, you become pretty good friends. And like I said, your father being one of them, we had a few moments where things went on at the plant and we had to back each other up and do things to do it. You're immediately a friend. Doesn't always mean you go have long walks in the park together, although, there are those that you do find that deep of a relationship, but you have relationships that work. And I want to tell everybody that gets into the industry and does this training, find your assets. One of the things they taught us in trade school is not what you know, is knowing how to go find the answer is the best thing you'll ever do. Please never forget that. RITA materials are the place to go find the information, to study, to learn. Your friends, another thing I love about RITA, it's a membership organization. You become part of RITA and you join a chapter. When you go to those chapter meetings, go to them. They're talking about doing those all online, and they're good. And it's good for people to get a chance. But man, when you go sit down in a room, Jim, you and I sit down in a room and we listen to a presentation, we have coffee or have dinner or whatever, beer or whatever it may be we do, and we talk. I bring up something with you. God damn it, Jim, that damn freaking 2-stage compressor I got in that room, it's just kicking my ass. Well, we had a problem like that and we did this, and I go back to work and fix the problem. There's a unity amongst us in this refrigeration industry that you'll never know until you enter it. But when you know it, you know the value, and I even become emotional when I talk about this, is those people you can trust. And those people are your friends in ways that don't happen naturally in just everyday life. You went to war together. You fought a system. Like you said, nobody else knew at the plant how to make it run, but we figured it out. We figured out why that thing was happening. And it's a really cool part of this industry that we're a unique bunch. And you become kind of a refrigeration nerd after a while. You enjoy it so much that you talk about it and you dream about it. That's the worst part. I know I've worked too much when all I do is dream about my work all day. But anyway.
Um, so, no, I appreciate you sharing that. So I want to go back to when I've been talking to ammonia operators, technicians for gosh, about 17 years. And there's something that's not driving people to say, I want to go get my RITA Caro certification, my RITA Zero certification, when these are the obvious next steps. And I want to suggest that, I guess in some way, I, I want to help create more motivation down this route. Meaning, I mean,
I
how
hear
do
you.
we help people engage with themselves where they're not and I want to make sure this comes out correctly because I think everyone works hard, they're showing up, they're doing a tremendous amount. At the same time, how do we become masters at what we do and not only get certifications but live that lifestyle? And I think certifications is a tool that fits in that bag.
But it's not everything.
It's
Yeah.
not everything, it's a piece of it, but it's a good sign that I'm going the right direction.
Well,
How do we help instill that?
I may not answer your question directly, but that's a multifaceted question, whether you realize it or not. There are so many things that play into it. Um, is in our industry, I was asked one time by a major corporate in this country after doing a conference show and speaking at the event, why can't we keep our people? And this is going to get to your point, so bear with me. And they said, is it money? I said, well, money plays a part in everybody's life. I mean, what are you paying them? And they told me what they were paying. I'm like, that's pretty much standard for what you're doing. I don't see that as a problem. Well, there's some reason they learn and then they leave. I said, you're not respecting them. And I really believe that that happens a lot. Is even though we are, God, how do you say this without shooting the rest of the world in the foot? We are a skilled trade. We have knowledge that others do not. But sometimes we are treated very much the same as the person that's hired, comes in at 8 o'clock, stands at a line, runs a piece of equipment, and then goes home at 5. That respect is something that we need to rise in our industry. And I don't think you and I are going to do that. The industry is going to have to finally realize we're short on people and start realizing they got to treat them right. That plays into people's attitude towards learning, doesn't it? Because as much as I loved refrigeration, when I wasn't getting the support of the company I worked for, I just wanted to go home. We've all been there, right, Jim? You have that day where everything kind of sucks and you get done at the end of the day and you're like, I don't want to do this crap, even though you know you need to spend another hour working on that project. You don't. But when I'm treated right and when I'm part of a team and when I feel that energy that we're talking about, man, I'll spend that extra hour. I'll spend it 2 extra hours. Hell, I've done jobs for my customers that I didn't put on a timesheet, that I didn't put on a work order. I did it because I cared. Yeah. And so I think that's a big part of the reason we're seeing this. I think that's going to change. But here's my advice to those that see that. If you work and get in this trade and you work at a place where you feel like you're devalued, let them know that. Don't come up to any boss and start throwing freaking dirt at them. Yo, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, and storm out because you got nowhere. Walk in and say calmly, I'm just not feeling I have value in this company. These are the things that I feel, and these are the things that I think would really help. Give suggestions of what you'd like to see in your job place, and I think we from underneath. I have this theory of leading from underneath. It's not just the manager leading this company, it's also us. And we're a trained skill. So lead from underneath. Go in, have reasonable conversation with the manager. Whether that person's a jerk or not, you go in straight to the point and honest, you'll get there. And if we raise that level of ownership, I think people are going to be more apt to want to learn. The people I've met, one of them worked for General Mills in Joplin, Missouri, Kirby Plank. I used to just dearly love Kirby. Brilliant guy. He had ownership running out of his veins at that company, and he shared that with every one of his operators, and he developed some of the best operators around, not because he trained them, he did, but not solely that alone, because he gave them that ownership. So back to my advice to everybody that enters this trade, if you're not seeing that and if you're not getting that response, I don't ask you to move. I don't want you to leave your job. Too many people are jumping ship all the time for the smallest little damn stupid thing. But start looking, because if you get disgruntled enough, bad things happen. I think I shared this with you before. There was a gentleman I became friends with doing infrared scans. He found out I knew refrigeration. He and I had some wonderful conversations. But a year before, or in the year before, during that year that he had a major catastrophic failure of a piece of equipment, I was watching him and listening to him, and I said, you need to find a new place to work. His name was John. I won't go any further than that. I said, John, you need to find a new job. He goes, you don't think I'm good at this? I said, I didn't say anything about that, John. I think that every one of us, when we get to the point we're so disgruntled that we don't do the job the way we know we should in a dangerous industry like we live, needs to go find another place to work. He kind of was offended. Of course, he didn't get time to do it before the disaster happened, but he did leave shortly thereafter. Don't wait for the disaster to happen. And that's the other reason you need to learn and study. And that's what we need to drive into people's minds. You may think you know what you're doing, but you probably don't know everything. And if you're learning from others, it will make you safer. Safety is about knowledge, because without knowledge of what's in front of you, you don't know what's coming at you. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
And I've gotten in some real pickles in my career because I didn't know what I didn't know, and I thought I was doing the right thing. I was just convinced I knew what I was doing. And then 2 weeks later, when I thought I should work at McDonald's, I realized I didn't have so much knowledge as I thought I did. And literally, that was the case. I honestly drove 6 hours home thinking I need to go quit this job and go work at McDonald's. But the reason that occurred to me is because I ran into something I didn't know. I didn't recognize I didn't know it, and I hadn't had the studies to know it on that particular piece of equipment. So learning is always part of your trade. And it's not just certification and back to your point on that, at RITA, it's also manufacturer's training. It's also, teaching yourself new equipment. You have to teach yourself, you have to learn from others, and you have to learn from organizations like RETA and IR and all the other groups out there, ASTI, and people out there. There's a lot of people in this industry to help you, but it's an ongoing process. And so we got to give ownership to our people, and I really believe that we need more ownership in our society. We have all divorced ourselves from ownership. We're not ownership of anything. I'm an individual. You know what? That's bunk. We all should have ownership of our lives, our jobs, our families, and if we would do that, we'd be better off. So when I said it was multifaceted, Jim, it is.
Yeah.
And I can't give you a solid answer. But I tell you what, I will do everything in my power to find every human being that goes into this industry and do my part to give them ownership of their knowledge, their learning, and their ability to do it. And I'll support every one of you that ever listens to joins this trade. You give me a call, send me an email. I'll get you an answer, and I'll help you with problems you're having. I had a gentleman, young man. I was at a RETA convention. I wasn't working for RETA at the time, but I gave a presentation. I struck him somehow. You never know when you're in front of people. And he came to me afterwards. He said, "Hey, can we talk?" I said, "Well, yeah, but I'm kind of heading to something else. Can we get together for a drink this evening?" He goes, "I don't drink." I said, "Neither do I. Let's have a Coke." When I say a drink, it doesn't have to be alcohol. And he said, "Yeah." So I'll meet you here. Sat down and talked to him, listened to the young man's story. And he was in a tough spot. He was working for a company, and I knew who the company was once he described it. I said, "Is this the company?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "You need to really consider your position right now and where you want to go with your position. You're going to make money at this place, and you're going to have a job. You decide what you want to do with it. I will not be part of that. You've got to decide that on your own, but I'm here to support you in knowledge and learning." So he calls me a few months later. He says, "I found another job," and he brought up the company. I said, "That is an awesome company." He says, "But I don't know if I'm going to get the job. Can you help me?" Man, I wrote that moment when we got off the phone. I wrote a review for the young man, and he got the job. And now he's within about a 3-year period of time, he's in management.
That's amazing, man.
He was being held back by where he was at. Now, once again, I'm not telling you every time you get upset at work at a boss, you quit. Because I'll tell you what, I get upset at myself. I've been my own damn boss. I'm so pissed at myself someday, I'd probably quit myself if I could. But the bottom line is, it's when you know your learning, your journey is being stunted. But how would you know that if you don't even see the need to learn? And I'm going to tell you once again, if you really want power in life, it's right here. If you really want to be something in life, I'm 60. I could care less about being anything anymore but a friend to everybody I can meet. But right up here is where your power is. It's not in money. It's not in anything else. In fact, the people that have the most sway in this country are the people with knowledge. And that has always been true. So that's what we got to get across.
No, 100%, Scott. There's two things I'm thinking of, like when we're talking about how do we attract more people into a mindset of mastery, meaning where you're always growing, always pushing, transforming to be the best you can. There's two things that come to mind specific to our trade. One is we have low-hanging fruit to be able to to save companies quite a bit of money on their electrical bills, efficiency, parts, contractors, and all those kinds of things. If we could help teach the individual operator, field service tech, more so the in-house guys. I would say the field service techs probably do a good job of this, maybe naturally on the average,
Sometimes.
maybe not. But especially the in-house guys, how can they communicate the value? Because there's a tremendous value that they have at their fingertips, whether they're in leadership or they're at an operator level, to be able to communicate that. But then separately from that is leadership, starting with oneself, and then leadership training as far as working with groups. And how do you present yourself in a way that creates value not only for yourself but for anyone that walks in front of you, that they really see that this person, there's something special about that person. I think there's some training there that could be useful. But
I do too. I'll tell you, and I'm going to sound like I got RITA on my shirt. I work for RITA. It's going to sound like a sales pitch, but it's not.
yeah,
When you come in and say I'm RITA certified, you're going to have people are going to give you that respect. You walk in and say, yeah, I worked at Joe's place down here and I did refrigeration. They don't know what that means. That may have meant you go in and look at a gauge once a day. That may have meant you were rebuilding compressors. So then they have to take your word. But when you have experience and certifications, that helps a lot. So that gives value. And then there was another big part that I shared earlier is if you want respect, treat with respect. Don't come in guns a-blazing because you're not where you want to be. Come in with confidence in yourself. And how do you get that confidence? But once again, we talked about this all throughout this, is training.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing and you're confident, not overly confident, but confident that you can go make that machine run, make that equipment run, make that product cold, get it to market. I don't have to come in guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
I've gone into my young years guns a-blazing a few times. I might have been out of control a few times in my life, but that's not the way to get where you want to go. So get your trainings, because isn't it soothing when you know what you're talking about? Isn't it more confident? We sit in this conversation today. If you'd have asked me in my 20s to have this conversation, I'd have told you no. I wouldn't even come. Not because I didn't have knowledge, but I didn't have knowledge of what this was going to look like to me, right? It was scary. It's the unknown is what's scary. But when you know your industry, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, and you're continually learning, then that helps. Another part is, and we talked about this the other day some, and I don't know how we get here in our industry, so I don't have an answer here, but this is something we all need to look at is, and I think that the RETA chapters, as I indicated earlier, is a great place because you got a group of people like-minded, learning the same things, fighting the same battles, can work together to give you that confidence, give you that ability, give you that respect that you're looking for. But I think that we need to do that more. Something that was done in the union that I really liked. I'm not a Bible thumping union person, but I do believe in unions. But I will tell you the strength of the union was when we had people that could go on a job site 100 strong and kick its ass and knew what we were doing. And I think we need to get to the point where we unite better. And that's going to lead people to want to do training too, because if you go to a chapter meeting per se, just using that as an example, and you're sitting and listening to the conversation, like, shit, I don't have a clue what those guys are talking about. Which, by the way, when that happens to you, been there, done that. Every one of us goes through those moments. I don't know what they're talking about. Don't let that stop you from going to the next meeting. Let it motivate you to go figure out what the hell they're talking about. And don't be afraid to go ask that old guy. Look for the guy that's kind of quiet in the background. Go over to him and say, man, what the hell were you guys talking about today? Be honest. Be straightforward. And that person may teach you some of the best things you've learned. So kind of this membership or this apprenticeship kind of feel is something I've always felt was something we got to find a way to get done. We got to find a way to mentor each other, take care of each other, be united in the group. Don't leave somebody hanging behind that doesn't know what's going on. Very few people have I met in my life that if we give them support, don't succeed. I met one person in my life, and here's my statement I made to everybody I met that was younger, is you're not going to understand it all right away. Don't expect yourself to. That's part of the journey.
Yes.
But at some point, you will get a light bulb going off in your head. It's going to start making sense. I had a young man ask me 3 years after we'd had that discussion, when does the light bulb go off? And he'd had 2 ammonia leaks and 1 total meltdown of electrical. I said, well, some people, the light bulb doesn't go off, my friend. You might want to go find something else to do. That is rare. That's so rare. But most of the people, I'd say the light bulb goes off. I think if you want that light bulb to go off, you go find that knowledge that lights that bulb. When you find that one time, you're never going to want to go back.
Yeah.
You know, Jim, in high school, I had about 3 things on my mind, and that was working at the ranch, my family's ranch. I loved farming, playing football, playing baseball, and girls. And there might have been something to do with alcohol in there, but I was young, so I won't talk about that. But those were really the only things I was really concerned about. And because of that, my grades weren't terrible, but they weren't good. And I went to J.M. Perry Tech School, and you know that in the first year and a half, I was a top student. We did trig, we did everything else. Not because I'm brilliant, because I had ownership. Because I'd finally found the beauty of learning. I found a reason to learn. And when I learned, I couldn't let it go. And in fact, for every young person out there, you'll never want to learn more than you will when you're older. Find that want to learn now. Don't wait till you're old like the rest of us, because I am limited in what I can do now. I think I can do everything, but I don't always get there anymore. So, take that journey now.
No, I want to mention, so that tag on to what you said there. So I went to a tech school. I went to Cypress College through HVAC refrigeration program. I had a similar kind of, young teen experience, and school was not the best at all for me. But when I went to my tech school, I found something far more than refrigeration and HVAC. And not only did I get in, after my first semester, into an incredible estimator position. Things started lining up in my life. Not only that, but I found myself. As weird as that is, I found myself. I found my power to learn to, like, man, I could figure out how to do heat load calculations. I can do, I forgot a lot of stuff by now, but how to, figure out the friction loss in piping and things of that sort. It was an amazing feeling, learning and liking it, and being around a group of people that were like me, that really didn't like high school that much. But our teachers were tough. They got us. If we were even a second late, doors are locked. You got to show up on time, and it helped me grow in ways that I take away till today. It really is amazing.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all
Stupid
good.
phones. No, and you're right on track, and that's what I was talking about. You just shared the same thing, is that fire that gets lit in your soul when you find that learning moment, and you find that there's something great ahead of you, and we can't sell that, we can't bottle that. They have to go find it. You had ownership of your life.
Yeah.
And I say ownership, and I can't stress that enough. And whether it locks in people's mind or not, I hope it does. You got to have ownership of your life. And the only way you're going to gain ownership of your life is to do something. I hate gossips. I may do it too. I'm human. But I hate gossiping. Oh, so-and-so, I know so-and-so, they got so much money and they got this huge cabin. Who gives a shit? Yeah. Sorry, my language again. But who cares? The people that I truly have respect for are those that have the respect of others because of their knowledge. And because I was talking about Kirby Plank. You walked in a room with Kirby and you felt that sense of ownership that he had, that you wanted to have. You felt that desire to be something real, not something that was put in there because of money or fancy things. It was true. It's real. When you're good at this trade, it's real. When you're good at this trade, you won't be out of work. And then maybe that's the thing that we use to drive people to more studies. I didn't have a day off in my career that I didn't ask for or get because of injury. Every single day I've been off is because I asked for it. Since I left the direct trade, I have moved from one job to the next immediately. To the point when I took this job at RITA, I told Jim Barron, our executive director, I said, Jim, I need to take a month off before I start. I've guaranteed myself that I'm going to take a month between jobs this time. Yeah, I started a day earlier than I was supposed to, and I got 2 days off. Yeah. So, but that's what you get when you have true value in the world, folks. Yeah. True value isn't in the money you make or the truck you have or the boat you have or anything else. True value is in the respect you gather because you do know what you're doing. Yeah. And people respect you. One time I was probably one of the biggest joys I ever got in my career. I don't need a lot of accolades, don't want them. But I was standing talking to a fire chief because I responded to a lot of ammonia leaks. I was young, I was crazy, I'd move fast, and so I got to go to a lot of ammonia leaks. And I was standing with a fire chief one day, and he barely knew me at this point. And he goes, "You're Scott?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm Scott." He goes, "Yeah, I was talking to Terry, who was the boss and the owner of the company I worked for." He goes, "I was talking to Terry. He said, you're going to be one of his best ever." Get emotional now thinking about it.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way, and just this huge sense of respect for the man that said that about me. That's real. That's real value. That's real ownership. And you're not going to get that if you don't go study and learn and grab a hold of your life. And that's what I want us to do more. We need this. We can all talk politics all we want about what's going wrong with this country. We're what make this country great. And if we want to make this country great, go out and earn ownership of your life, take ownership of it, and then do something with it to where we make ourselves able to walk in the room where people go, better listen to this guy or gal because they know what they're talking about. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if any of that makes any sense, but and sorry I got a little emotional there, but I'll never forget that moment. And so go
that's
get
a beautiful
those
thing. No, I appreciate you sharing that, by the way. That's a beautiful story because that's just the truth, man. I mean, if you own what you're doing, and through training, that's how you get there. Through training, practice, putting it together, showing up when you don't want to show up, doing the things, the hard things. For my take, I think getting people together that want to transform and being around a group of people that are working actively in that mindset. That's what we're working towards with our platform, with the Industrial Jobs Network, is we want people who are transforming, whether you're a leader and you want to help folks that are growing, or you're growing, you're day one and you're looking for some way of like, what's that path look like? I want to connect people together so we can grow, transform, and just make this and be able to have the stories like you had, be able to imagine, be able to give that to somebody because they earned it, because they
Well,
owned
you know something, Jim, is you and I had the first time that I got emails from you guys, I noticed them, put them away. Because, you know, at RITA, we have a lot of people looking for work at times. I thought, well, someday I'm going to talk to Jim. And then I saw your name and I'm like, I really got to talk to this guy and find out if there's any relation. Yeah. But time goes by, right? We get busy and work. But the last one that you sent that created my email back to you was basically, I think we should work together is what I was trying to say. And I think I feel that way because what you're doing is the right thing. And we're all trying to find this answer to fill our industry. But we need to fill it with the people that are willing to go out and take control of their lives, own their lives. I also have a story about a young man in California. I won't go any further than that. He might even see this, but he didn't do so well in high school to the point he was probably in juvenile a few times. Not probably, he was. Yeah. Had alcohol problems, drug problems, girl problems, all the things that you can have, and was not in a family that had any real support structure. He came to work at a facility for a friend of mine as the manager, and they gave him ownership. They just gave it to him because they wanted to. They wanted to bring this young man up. He is now a facility service manager for the company. And he did that without any schooling. He barely made it out of high school, folks. But he's the top guy out there right now. You can be this. And if you're already a 4.0 student and you just really don't like school, hey, we welcome you too. I mean, we need those people to bring into this. So, yeah, I think that we're on the right track. I think we need to keep working towards it. And, you know, nothing grows better than things grow naturally. And I think that what you guys are doing at your company, Jim, is awesome because it's
Thank you.
Putting dirt out there that is fertile and it's growable. And it allows these people to plant their feet and grow. And that's what I hope we're doing at RITA, is supporting you and others to, once you put your feet in the ground, where do I get the water I need? Where do I get this? How do I do this? And I think that we're a perfect team in that way. Yeah. There is a big concern in the world right now about people jumping ship. And, you know, you struggle with that all the time. And I think it's something that needs to go away because people jumped ship because coming out of COVID, people didn't want to sit very long. And that's going away. Now we need to start giving people respect. So we need to get companies to understand that and start giving them people. It's a journey, right? We're not going to fix this today. And by the way, I have a saying right on a sign in here in my office that I love. And some people watching this may not know who Paul Harvey is, but Paul Harvey used to have a radio show, and at the end of his radio show, or during his radio show, he'd say, "Here's the rest of the story." And he would take stories that we got on the news and tell you the rest of the story. And I loved listening to Paul Harvey when I was doing service. I had an AM radio and I could get Paul Harvey. So I listened to Paul Harvey all the time. And it says on the sign, it says, "Just remember, in days like these, there have always been days like these." We've been through this before, Jim.
Yeah.
You know, the difference is the people that knew how to fix it or found a way to fix it are now gone. So we've got to step up. We've got to do this. And so another thing I want to say to everybody that may hear this is, you're in the industry, step up, be a leader. You don't have to get in front of a podium and talk to 1,000 people if you don't want. I know a lot of really good leaders. You would go to a meeting, you wouldn't know they were a leader because they don't have any desire to stand in front of people. But boy, when you leave that meeting, they're the first guy to come up and say, "Yeah, Scott, I heard what you said. We need to think about this, or we need to think about that." They lead from underneath. And, you know, you can be a leader in many ways, but help us out. And just don't ever forget, you got a friend here, and I know that in Jim.
Absolutely.
You know, you got a question, you want to know, you want to learn, you're not real sure. Give us a call. Do whatever you need to do to answer those questions for yourself. Yeah, Jim, you know, I want to end this with just a simple fact that, you know, in this industry, there's a lot of words get shared like, "Hey, brother," you know, really big in the union, or some way that you respond to people that you really have gone to war with. And I've never found more of that than I have in the trades. People that I have respect for respect for me. People that have stepped up and helped me in times of need. I've helped them in times of need. I think that's one thing that people need to remember is this is a family, and join the family. Hey, we're like every family. We're dysfunctional at times. We're not always perfect, and we never will be, but we'll take care of each other. And that's what you're going to find in this industry. And like every family, you'll have the one guy out there that tells you, "I'm not going to teach you anything because you'll take my job." Well, you know what? The guy that told me that, I took his job. I've never been that kind of person, but I'll tell you what, if you want to throw the gauntlet down, we're going to go to war, boys.
Yes.
That's really rare in our industry. I'd love to have you as part of the family. Everybody in listens to this and comes to Jim, I share this message with everybody. Come on in. Let's see what we can do together. Jim, have found the biggest thing that I have ever found joy in is the success of others. And I know those sound like words or words that you might share, but when you've really experienced, it's kind of like that learning thing we talked about. I was teaching hazmat with a friend of mine, Bob Cole. And Bob kind of was in the training a little bit longer than I was, so he kind of knew more, but I immediately ended up being in a position of leadership. And I would never say Bob worked for me, but I set up classes for him and stuff. And we were teaching together once, and Bob got on a roll, and it was my section to do next. And I remember sitting down in the corner and saying, "No, I ain't getting up." And I had a smile on my face from ear to ear. And Bob looked back at me and he says, "Well, Scott, you're up next." And I said, "No, Bob, I'm not." And he smiled back at me and went to work. And that's the joy that we can find, is in collaboration and seeing the success of the people around us. And you can only get that if you get the knowledge, you get good in this industry, and you build these friendships to where you can watch your friends succeed beyond your wildest dreams, and know that you are part of that, and you can stand up there and succeed just like they can, but you don't need to, because you're a team. And you know, maybe those words ring shallow with people that haven't experienced it yet. If they do, come on. Like I said, come on, bring it on, brother and sister. We'll get you there. We'll get you where you need to be. So those are my only words to it. And I have a deep passion for this, and I know that seeing you all, especially the younger people, succeed beyond myself is my dream, because at this point we need new people, and we need them bad. It's the biggest reason to join this industry. You ain't going to be out of work. If you're out of work for a long period of time in this industry, it's one of those times you might want to look at something different, because there is no reason you should ever be out of work in this industry. It's just not going to happen.
Especially if you're RITA Caro Ciro certified. I can't stress that enough. Especially the Ciro folks that have 3+ years of experience. If you're not RITA Ciro certified, you're leaving money on the table. I guarantee it. And if you don't feel like your company's taking care of you in the right way, get RETA certified, work with that company, work to build your relationship with them. I always say do that first. That's going to be your first best low hanging fruit. But after a year or so, if you're still in the same situation and you've got your zero, give us a call. We'll help you.
Yeah. Well, and Jim, one last thing I want to say to you in closing, and to your company, is it's really a joy to see in our world today, businesses that are out there doing business are usually motivated by monies and successes. One thing I really love about what you guys are doing, and the reason I was drawn to you in the beginning, is we all got to make a living, and yeah, we all got to be successful, but you're doing this for the right reasons. And that's a saying that my friend and our executive director at RITA always says: do the right things for the right reasons. And thank you for doing that, Jim. Thank your company for doing that.
No, thank you, Scott. I appreciate that, and we truly are really working to do this for the. I appreciate you sharing that, man. Thank you. It really means a lot. Scott, thank you so much for being on here today. I loved my conversation with you. It was awesome. And hopefully we could do this again sometime in
Yeah,
the future. So I'm excited. And maybe we could do a live event. Might be something we take a look at as
that'd be
well.
really cool. That'd be really cool. Yeah, I'd in my travels, that'd be cool. Yeah, we're also going to be doing some videos too and stuff that at facilities and stuff. There may be some ties there too. We'll have to talk about it. So
That'd be awesome, man. I'd love to do it. Well,
all right,
Scott, I wish you a wonderful week. Thank you again for being here. Truly, we're honored to have you. And yeah, I appreciate it, man.
thank you all.
All right. Take care, Scott. Bye bye.
Thank you.